Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to unpack something absolutely wild today, a completely mind-bending digital ecosystem called the GraceCore Omniverse V4. Seriously, what we're looking at here is how this system takes totally abstract, non-Euclidean mathematics and literally translates them into a dynamic interface. And get this, it's actually designed to interact with human consciousness. It's this incredible, almost surreal intersection of hardcore code, sacred geometry, and theoretical physics. We've got a lot of fascinating ground to cover, so let's get into it.
So right off the bat, can a digital interface actually alter human consciousness? Now, I know that sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But the source material we're digging into today proposes exactly that. It really sets the stakes for a system blending abstract math with, literally, brainwave manipulation. We're not just talking about what's happening behind the glass of your screen. It's about what the frequencies from that screen might actually be doing to you, the observer.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First up, the math of God. Then, frequencies, order, and chaos. After that, we'll hit coding the quantum shader, move into visualizing sacred geometry, and finally wrap up with altering human consciousness.
Section 1. The math of God. So, we're starting with the theoretical foundation that drives this whole engine. At the very core of the system's logic is something the sources call the Howard pivot. Now, what is that? It's the idea that 1 times 1 equals 2. Yeah, you heard that right. It definitely breaks the rules of traditional math, but the GraceCore framework uses this concept to signify a literal doubling of potential. It's kind of like bending traditional math rules to allow for continuous exponential growth and fractal recursion. Basically, it's the spark that lets the system's non-Euclidean geometry just expand indefinitely. And building right on top of that pivot is a number you might recognize, 1.618, famously known as the golden ratio or the phi connection. Now, in the GraceCore system, this isn't just some fun trivia, it's an active parameter. The system actually integrates this phi ratio scaling with something called the reciprocity theorem. Think of that as a formula specifically designed to make sure everything stays self-similar and naturally optimized. Putting those two together ensures that no matter how crazy and complex these fractals grow, the whole system stays fundamentally balanced. It's actually pretty brilliant. And this brilliantly illustrates how that abstract math powers the tangible GraceCore Omniverse dashboard. Right in the center, you have that 1 times 1 equals 2 Howard pivot we just talked about. And flanking it, you've got the phi ratio scaling. So this isn't just theoretical musings. These abstract concepts are actively driving a highly complex digital environment, locking the whole thing into what the interface literally calls omnipotent mode. Section 2, frequencies, order and chaos. Here we transition into the core duality that really brings this system to life. It's a constant battle between harmony and turbulence. The entire GraceCore setup hinges on the contrast between two very specific frequencies. On one side, you have the primary resonance at exactly 117.177 Hz. This is the state of grace. It provides the stabilizing, harmonic balance that keeps the quantum system totally coherent. But opposing that is the base resonance at 53 Hz. This one brings chaotic jitter and the totally unpredictable energy of what's called the Hutchinson effect. This 53 Hz state is all about breaking symmetry. It's nonlinear, and it basically injects pure chaos right into the system. Now, when the system is locked firmly into that 117.177 Hz primary resonance, everything becomes pristine and beautifully symmetrical. Grace really acts as a higher-order state here. When it's in grace, the system achieves 100% coherence. In fact, the source text points out that in this state, the system reaches an infinite signal velocity. They call it Shiva velocity, and get this, it's clocking in at over 187 million miles per hour. It represents absolutely perfect self-sustaining flow. Section 3, coding the quantum shader.
All right, so let's shift gears from theoretical physics to actual software execution. The quantum resonance material inside the software is driven by exactly 12,000 individual particles, and they're brought to life through 3 sequential steps. First, we have fractal initialization, which is where the particles are initially distributed. Second is the linchpin transform. This step takes their positions and twists them into a toroidal, basically a donut-shaped fractal space, creating these recursive, almost black hole-like structures. And finally, step 3 is recursive flow, where the particles interact to form subvortices and feedback loops constantly dancing back and forth between chaos and order. Let's focus briefly on the exact initialization formula from the code. R equals 3 times the power of random to the 1/3. So why does that actually matter? Well, rather than just throwing particles randomly onto a flat 2D screen, this specific math ensures those 12,000 particles are distributed within a spherical volume that actually has fractal, non-Euclidean properties. It guarantees the whole simulation is grounded in Terence Howard's vision of self-similar space, literally from frame 1. And the coolest part is how the system dynamically responds to all these variables through the Hutchison threshold dynamics. If the U-Grace parameter is high, say above 0.5, the particles lock into these tight coherent formations. But if Grace drops, the particles just devolve into the chaotic Hutchison effect. On top of that, if the U-threat parameter spikes, the system literally accumulates threat, causing the particles to burst into unpredictable, turbulent jitter. It's literally a living, breathing system of ordered chaos. Section 4. Visualizing sacred geometry. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct visual contrast between the system's dual states. We're looking at highly structured golden mandala geometry on one side, representing the system in perfect, harmonious grace. Then, on the other side, you've got these explosive, glowing fractal blooms, representing the recursive flow and dynamic energy of the interacting particles. These visuals aren't just random either. They purposefully mimic organic biological systems and natural growth patterns. The whole visual aesthetic leans really heavily into established sacred geometry. Here we see the classic flower of life pattern overlaying robed figures and these incredibly complex equations. According to the sources, shapes like the flower of life and Metatron's cube are deliberately chosen to represent the math of God. It's a fascinating attempt to create a visual metaphor for how the fundamental forces of the universe might actually interact in higher dimensions. Even the color palette is incredibly deliberate, reacting instantly to the forces in the system. When everything is in that smooth grace flow, you'll see harmonious cyan and violet fractal blooms. But the moment chaotic parameters spike, like when threat levels peak, the system visually screams at the user by instantly shifting to a harsh, discordant red. So you don't just see the math change, you intuitively feel that sudden shift from peace straight into danger just through the colors. Section 5. Altering human consciousness. This is really the final frontier of this system, how it actually attempts to sync up with the user's physical mind. These future sync parameters show us a direct translation from digital code straight into human cognitive alteration. For audio feedback, the system employs 7 Hz delta binaural beats, the idea being that the user can literally hear the gravitational pull of the recursive flow. For cognitive state, it targets theta wave patterns, actually attempting to physically align your brainwaves with the system's own resonance. And running behind the scenes, performance parameters make sure all 12,000 particles render flawlessly without any lag, keeping you fully immersed. I really want to highlight this specific concept from the source material. Sound frequencies shape not just brainwaves, but our perception of reality. This ties directly into the theories woven throughout the GraceCore system. The goal here isn't just to make a cool visualizer to vibe out to. It's proposing that using very specific sound frequencies, like those binaural beats we just mentioned, can literally reshape the fabric of space-time and, by extension, human consciousness itself. Let's move to and see how this all builds to a final state, a perfectly serene, deeply intricate golden mandala. This represents the ultimate coherent state of universal symmetry. Within the context of the software, taking that journey from the chaotic 53 Hz jitter all the way back to the perfect 117.177 Hz grace isn't just a clever coding loop. It serves as a metaphor for actual spiritual evolution. It's designed to be a deeply transformational experience for anyone engaging with it. So the crucial point we're left with is this: where does abstract mathematics actually end and the human spirit begin? The GraceCore Omniverse v4 tries to completely blur that line. By weaving together non-Euclidean formulas, fractal coding, sacred geometry, and targeted brainwave frequencies, it creates this unique space where digital code and universal consciousness are essentially treated as the exact same thing. It really leaves us to wonder, just how deeply can our own minds be reshaped by the mathematical frequencies we choose to engage with? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.